Good morning, Chairperson and colleagues, and thank you for the opportunity to present the nicest part of the game meat industry to you this morning. The health control of game meat intended for the local consumer market and the application of current and prospective health and hygiene regulatory parameters is my topic for this morning. And I've been hampered with a restricted time span, so I'm going to run into it and show you what I want, what are the message that I want to bring back. Just to start with Dr. 𝐓𝐶 𝐂𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, and I think everyone knows him, the president of the World Food Organization at AFASA. He said in today's world, food security no longer means you produce everything you consume or you consume everything you produce. The new paradigm involves producing enough of that in which you have a competitive advantage so that you can exchange it for that in which you don't have such an advantage. He is excited about the prospect of game meat being sold in sophisticated markets in Europe and the US, where traceability and the environmental factors play a role in the consumer's choice. This is very important in terms of the cherry on top, and that is the export market in terms of what our game meat is worth in South Africa. Now, to start with the legislation, this is the most important part. We are the most strictly regulated industry, I think, of all the different industries in South Africa. And you can see the little one there being hampered with all this type of red tape on its head. Now, there's different legislations from the different departments, and I'm just going to highlight the most important ones. In the middle there is the Department of Health, which I represent, and there's a specific regulation, the Foodstuffs, Cosmetic and Disinfectant Act, with Regulation 368, that prescribes exactly what is the control and the requirements that you must comply with when you produce game meat. Having said that, in terms of the Meat Safety Act, we still don't have a game meat regulation. Of the different regulations, that's red meat, poultry, ostriches, crocodiles, and game, game has not been promulgated as yet. Although there is a very excellent draft that we've communicated and negotiated with the agriculture and people for many, many years, from 2004 to 2012, to get to a draft that we can all live by and that is practical executable. The mandates of the Department of Agriculture and Health differs to a big extent in terms of on the farm, the live animal is part of Department of Agriculture. The moment it gets courted and further than just killing the animal, then it becomes a Department of Health, and you'll see the transportation, labeling, secondary processing in terms of additives and preservatives, the quality, the consumers' expectations, and safe for human consumption is all with the Department of Health. Some of the further regulations include, in the middle again, I want to point your attention to the Tshwane policy for the processing of game meat. This policy I developed a few years ago in terms of to manage the number of game meat that was processed in meat processing plants, which is butcheries. Also, the last paragraph in terms of the provincial nature conservation, we all know that it's the case of one dog with 9 tails, and all of the provinces have their different systems and requirements. When we go back to the Regulation 638, it's very specific that you may not handle meat in contravention of the Meat Safety Act, meaning although we don't have a regulation, it's still very important to note the fact that you're not allowed to handle meat unless it's gone through an approved abattoir and it's gone through meat inspection. And this is the most important part in terms of fit for human consumption. And that's going to be my focus in terms of the message that I want to put to you today. So in terms of the red meat regulation, there was a restriction done on own consumption. And I think everyone in the game industry know that for many years, own consumption was sort of abused to have enough animals that you can actually sell off some of them in terms of all the processing and to actually provide to the local commercial market. In terms of the draft game regulation, there was a provision made for not independent meat inspection. This is a person on the farm that can conduct the meat inspection, as there is provision made for a first inspection where the bleeding and the evisceration in the veld can take place. So there was already a provision made in terms of for the game industry. Very important, the difference between export and local. Now, this was a scientific study that was done. I'm going to show you the results just now. I just want to show you the background in terms of what is an export facility on a game farm that is registered for export looks like. And you can see there was a night harvesting, night culling done, very controlled, as much hygiene parameters as possible. There's the inspection part in daylight, as requirements for meat inspection is quite strict in terms of the visibility. So more of export culling. This is a typical local facility, a local rural abattoir on a game farm. It is not registered, but it provides for the local market. And if you look at the image, you can see the hygiene is there. It conforms with what we expect in terms of the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act. Some meat inspection, I'm just to quickly show you. There's a very good example of heartworms. You don't see that very often. The reality is, in terms of game animals, they don't present with a lot of diseases. So let me just get back to the peer review study that I did in 2012, ended in 2012. And I want to show you, I'm not going to go through all the materials and methods, but I want to show you specifically what the results was. Now, the bacteriological analysis was done for the local and the export groups. There was about 600 carcasses that was swapped and tests being done on them to try and determine what the total bacterial count, as well as the pathogens such as E. coli and Staphylococcus aureus presented on these two groups of carcasses. And if you look at the parameters there in terms of when it complies and when it do not comply, you'll see that both of the groups presented very well in terms of there's no significant difference between them, but they both comply in terms of the bacteriological contamination, which means it's fit for human consumption. On the second one, you'll see that there was also some tests done in terms of the temperatures and the pH values of the first hour post-mortem and then the stabilizing one at 72 hours, which makes it also very clear that in terms of game meat, we all know the pH is naturally very low, that the shelf life connected to the pH value presented very well. And the compliance there was good as well. So the main reason for indicating all of the studies was done based on the fact that there's not a significant difference between game carcasses harvested for the export market and game carcasses hunted for local consumption. And obviously, I will not be a good presenter unless I show you all the health benefits of game meat. This was very extensively researched in terms of what is the quality and the health benefits of game meat. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think it's very important. There's a list of all the studies that was done, that the health benefits of game meat is of such an extent that we need to utilize this unique food source in South Africa. And then I just want to put something that the director of the World Bank said in the application of meat safety. It is within reach of the young and upcoming game farmers and local communities owning land with wildlife. The result will be, if it's available, nutrition and the adoption of wildlife utilization for commercial purposes. Taking into consideration the total ban of hunting and elephants, I want to refer to Tanzania here as well. We must not make the same mistake in terms of game meat. And then Rolf Uys, he said the secret to ensuring safe game meat is not to do thousands of microbial tests, nor is it to have a hazard program. that looks acceptable on paper, but to implement a practical system that really works and that can actually promote the game industry and the provision of game meat on our shelves in all our retail shops. I'm going to close with a statement in terms of my vision for the industry going forward. We need to increase rural game abattoirs on game farms, not only on game farms, but on reserves, on parks. This will legally access local markets and provide not only sustainability of game commercially available, but it will also allow a good pricing structure for the future. Thank you so much for listening to me.